Welcome to the podcast North American Literature, hosted by the Research Group Studies in American Literature and Culture from the University of Granada. I am Alejandro Román Rodríguez, and with me is Nuria Murcia Ballesta, who's been diving into the curious connection between Nathaniel Hawthorne, My Kinsman Molineux, and Bernard Malamud's The Magic Bottle. Today we are talking about your protagonists who get completely lost and two authors who might be closer than they seem. Welcome, Nuria.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here and to bring these two eccentric stories into conversation.
So, Nuria, let's begin with the first of the two stories you've chosen, My Kinsman Molineux. Takes us there. What's going on this tale?
Right, so imagine you're a teenage boy named Robin from the countryside just off the boat in colonial Boston. You've got nothing but a name, Major Molineux, your uncle, and you believe he'll help you start a new life. You walk into the city full of confidence, expecting doors to open for you. But instead, you get silence, weird looks. The city is cold and disorienting, no one wants to help, and the longer Robin searches, the more the city turns into this maze of strange characters and half-truths.
Apparently, having friends in high places does not seem to work in this story.
No doubt, connections are useful for many in life, but one has to be sure of really knowing what's their reputation.
Whom exactly is his uncle then? Why does he have such a bad reputation?
His uncle is this Major Molineux, a British colonial official, someone who's held power in the American colonies thanks to England. So in the context of the story, which takes place just before the American Revolution, that makes him a symbol of the old oppressive order.
So basically, he's the figure everyone wants out.
Exactly, he represents everything the townspeople are starting to reject. Loyalty to the crown, inherited privilege, political control, and Robin, without realizing it, walks into the middle of a revolution with the wrong name.
What does Robin do then?
He laughs loudly, that's the twist. When he finally does find his uncle, Major Molineux, it's during a nightmarish public procession. He's being tarred and feathered by a mob, this shaming form of public punishment which was quite common in the American colonies. The mob would pour sticky hot tar on someone and then cover them with feathers, making them look silly and feel very uncomfortable.
Wow, that sounds brutal. And you say Robin laughs at his uncle?
Yes, instead of defending him or crying out, he bursts into laughter. It's a disturbing moment. Whether it is liberation or cruelty, that's honestly hard to say, probably just a matter of survival. Trying to fit in a community, we tend to say, if you can't beat your enemies, then join them.
I think that's a good summary for now of one of the most famous short stories written by Hawthorne. Let's help our audiences situate in time, because it is set before the Revolutionary War, but Hawthorne wrote it after it.
Yes, you are well informed, and although it is set in Puritan New England, just like the Scarlet Letter, this tale was written in 1832, decades after the war.
Now you've given me the cue to ask you about a contest. What do you think this story reveals about American of the 1830s?
After gaining independence from Britain, the USA lived a period of growth marked by its expansion to the West and a rapid industrialization. In literature, this time is called the Romantic period, the American Renaissance, or, I believe more accurately, its nascence. After all, this is their first coming of age, and it will develop during the years between the 1830s and the Civil War.
I clearly see the connection then between Robin exploring the world of the first time and the USA developing as a nation.
That's it, and authors were asking themselves what they could write about that sounded genuinely American. They were seeking their literary identity And what Hawthorne did that was very original indeed was to revise the myth of the American Revolution. The behavior of the mob reveals that popular power is liberating, but it can also be degrading.
So in the end, Robin is left alone, as it all started. Isn't it the basic American conditions of life and fiction?
Well, it seems that Robin must learn to prosper from his own hard work. And yes, you were right to point out that many American characters are isolated individuals. This is also the case of Leo Finkel, the second protagonist of this podcast.
You're going one step ahead of me. I was about to ask you about the Magic Barrel. But first, tell me a little bit about his author, Bernard Malamud, because many of us are not as familiar with him as with Hawthorne.
Yes, Malamud was born to Jewish immigrant parents in Brooklyn in 1914. It is interesting to note that Jewish American writing had been significant from the 1890s, but it flowered especially after 1945.
The Holocaust brought their ethnic heritage to consciousness.
Of course, but although his protagonists tend to be Jewish and he draws on the Old Testament, his work addresses themes that are considered universal. Essentially, we may mention suffering, love, and their search for meaning in life. Let me ask you, have you ever felt buried in books, studying for a long time and then questioning what is the point of life?
That's a feeling I've had lately while studying for my exams.
So you already have something in common with Leo Finkel, the protagonist in The Magic Barrel. The difference is that you've probably been studying English or American literature in Granada, while Leo had been studying in New York, spending 6 years in front of the Talmud to become a rabbi.
6 years with the Talmud, and then what happens? Why does he start doubting everything?
Because he decides to get married. Not out of love, but because it's expected. And when he realizes he doesn't even know how to love, or whether he loves God, it cracks something in him. Oh, and I forgot to mention something. Salzman the matchmaker. Leo doesn't know how to meet women. No Tinder apps by the 1950s, and not used to meeting anyone actually apart from his books. So he hires Salzman, who is an old school matchmaker.
You're assuming we know what a matchmaker is.
Oh, true. A matchmaker is someone who arranges marriages, traditionally in religious or tight-knit communities. Leo's own parents had been brought together by a matchmaker, and he thinks it was successful and practical, yes, above all. But Salzman, in this case, is not the professional he expects.
We want to know more about the Magic Barrel. Would you mind the format quick-fire question?
You mean short questions and fast answers? It's a challenge, but let's do it. Yes?
Most awkward moment in the Magic Barrel?
The date with Lily. The first woman he has met for ages. She psychoanalyzes Leo so brutally, he basically realizes he's loveless.
Strangest object?
Salzman's portfolio, or as the title says, the Magic Barrel. We never actually see a literal barrel, but it feels bottomless, as if he could find the perfect match there.
What about the big plot twist?
The twist comes when he sees the photo of Stella, who is the matchmaker's own daughter, hidden among the others, and Leo becomes obsessed with her. Salzman says it was not supposed to be there, but I am not super sure that we can trust him. He probably left it there purposely, since it changes everything.
And is she even real?
Good question. She might be, but she's described like a fallen angel, maybe even a prostitute. It's all a very dreamy and symbolic.
And Leo's biggest mistake?
Thinking love is logical, that it can be arranged like a resume.
What is your favorite line?
I knew you were asking me this, so I came prepared. My favorite line is this one. He saw himself for the first time as he truly was, unloved and loveless.
And finally, biggest question the story leaves us with?
Whether Leo is running towards salvation and true love as in a fairy tale with Stella, or whether it is all an illusion, a trick prepared by the matchmaker. We don't know. The ending is open, and that's what makes it so haunting.
You've passed the test of these quick questions, and what we have is one boy chasing family in the case of Robin, one chasing the right wife in the case of Leo. Two identity crises, but there are many more similarities. How did the idea come up to study the influence of Hawthorne in Molineux?
It started with me just reading The Magic Barrel. Some details about it felt strangely familiar. The magical atmosphere, the slightly surreal elements, and a strange sense of humor reminded me so much of my kinsman Major Molineux, and I noticed very clearly this initiation pattern that develops in Hawthorne's story.
Let's go step by step. What are these initiation stories?
They are narratives that follow a young or an inexperienced protagonist as they go through some kind of transformation, usually a painful one that leads them toward adulthood or self-awareness.
So you felt the connection instinctively first?
Yes, it was intuitive. Then I started wondering if that was just a coincidence. But when I started digging, I casually found a critical memoir on Malamud. In an interview, he was asked about his influences, and among the names Dostoevsky, Chekhov, or Henry James, he mentioned Nathaniel Hawthorne. That was precisely what I was looking for.
And no one else had linked these two stories in particular?
Not that I could find. Critics have compared The Magic Barrel with The Scarlet Letter, mostly because of the laugh and sin dynamic, but I didn't find anything connecting it specifically to my kinsman Major Molineux. I guess that's what made it exciting, to be able to explore a new connection.
After developing this idea of the initiation story in your essay, you focused on city as the common setting of both these stories. How is the setting relevant here?
Yes, both take place in the city. On the one hand, we have Robin arriving in Boston in the 18th century, and on the other hand, Leo lives in the New York of the 50s, the 1950s. Both are a long time apart, but in my work I mention that it was the psychological mood attached to the city that caught my attention.
The city is alienating, isn't it?
That's exactly how I felt it. Hawthorne presents the town as ugly, cold, and pleasant, and hostile. And in The Magic Barrel, Malamud describes Leo as living in a small, almost meager room in the very first paragraph. He does not interact with the city. So, in both cases, it can be understood as another mystery, reinforcing the young protagonist's sense of being lost.
I like that you mentioned the word mystery, because I bet you want to talk about magic in these postcards too.
Of course, I think one of the most striking similarities between the two stories is how they blur the line between reality and something more dreamlike, even magical. Hawthorne, for instance, fills the city with this nightmarish, almost theatrical atmosphere. You've got crooked streets, a very mysterious, double-faced man with red and black colors who could be the representation of human viciousness. And even the church scene, where a single beam of light illuminates the Bible, feels like a distorted religious vision.
Right, and you're left wondering what it all meant. What magic did you find in Malamud?
In The Magic Barrel, as the title already hints, there's a subtle but very powerful presence of magic. One of the first things that stands out is the role of the photograph of Stella. She is not introduced like a real person, but more like a vision. Even her name, Stella, which means star, adds to that. She has been interpreted as a falling star, suggesting something fragile, lost, or ruined. But what's beautiful is that her photograph suggests also hope, redemption, and love for Leo.
And the buried itself?
That's the best part. There's no literal barrel in the story. Maybe Salzman's briefcase, where he keeps the photographs, is meant to be the barrel, but the metaphor is so rich. It reminds us that love is a kind of magic, something that defies logic or calculation. It's like the briefcase has a secret compartment.
So we're not in realistic fiction here, not completely.
Not at all. As in magical realism, both authors twist reality just enough to make it strange and more suggestive.
And I cannot forget to ask you about the strange character of Salzman.
Indeed, the mentors are my favorite characters in both stories. Let's start with Salzman. Interpretations of this character differ. Some read him in a really dark light, like a devilish figure tempting Leo with profane love. Their relationship would be thus a kind of Faustian pact.
And you quote the text in that he has his office in the air, in his socks. What does?
Exactly, he seems to hover between an earthly and a spiritual dimension. But not everyone sees him as sinister. He may be an angel fulfilling the divine task of helping Leo move towards genuine connection with emotion, love, and God. Oh, and he's also seen as a narrative device, almost like Malamud's stand-in within the story, which makes sense. Salzman leads Leo towards revelation, but never explains anything directly. He just appears, steers the plot, and disappears.
Kind of like Hawthorne's Kind Gentleman.
Yes, there's a really interesting parallel there. In Hawthorne's story as well, the so-called kind gentleman appears in the end to hint Robin that he shouldn't follow his relative, Major Molineux, but rather stay in the city and make his own way. He is the only character who does not laugh at him, and although he does not reveal much to Robin, he seems to know everything.
Like the narrator who devises the tale.
Exactly. Both the matchmaker and the kind gentleman would be the mediators between protagonists and readers, representing the perspective of the author and metafictionally leading their characters towards their fates.
Okay, time for a very important question. Why is there so much fish in the magic barrel?
Great question. Salzman is always chewing smelly fish. It's gross, but it's funny. Some critics say it symbolizes Leo's repressed desire. Freud would have had a field day, but I simply analyzed it as one of the many humorous details in the story, just like the series of slammed doors or the comic appearances and disappearances of Salzman.
And how about Hawthorne? Does the humor carry over?
It does, but it's subtler. Hawthorne's story uses irony. There's the word shrewd. The narrator keeps insisting that Robin is shrewd, but it becomes painfully obvious he isn't. He misreads every situation, every encounter. The boy keeps thinking that people's rejections are due to his lack of income and that his uncle will live in a great house and will be respected. The irony deepens every time the word is repeated because the reader is more aware of the lie each time.
So in both stories, we are watching someone completely misinterpret the word around them.
Yes, that's where the comedy comes from. Not from the situations themselves, but from the gap between perception and reality.
I feel the humor isn't just for fun.
Basically, it reveals how out of sync the protagonists are with this reality.
Up until now, we've talked of themes and style through the characters, the setting, humor, magic, but still we have to consider a big question. Do Robin and Leo grow up?
That's the key question, isn't it? And the truth is, it remains ambiguous. The idea of initiation implies growth, some kind of passage into maturity, but in both stories, that passage is open to interpretation. Take Robin, for example. He laughs, yes, but he hasn't yet found anything solid to replace the worldview he's lost. He is no longer naive, but he's not quite mature either.
So he's stuck in limbo?
In a way, yes, but others take a different view. They think Robin does adapt by adopting a kind of double face. He learns the ironic performance needed to survive in the city.
And what about Leo?
He runs towards Stella, trembling, while Salzman chants the Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for the dead. The central question is whether here we are witnessing the death of his character or a metaphorical resurrection.
And what do you think?
I do think Leo grows up.
And would you say Malmut answered Hawthorne?
Yes, Hawthorne ends in bitter laughter, but Malamud adds a hint of hope. Love may be irrational, but it's a move towards connection. So maybe Hawthorne says, "Look at what America has become," and Malamud replies, "Yes, but look at what it could still be." Leo isn't complete, but he's opened up, and maybe that's enough.
This has been fascinating. Two initiation stories, two centuries, two mysterious mentors. With this, we've explored the influence of Hawthorne and Malamud's tale. Thank you so much, Nuria, for sharing your research, your ideas, and your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to explore these stories in this format. I hope someone out there gives The Magic Barrel a read after this.
This was another episode by the Studies in American Literature and Culture group from the University of Granada. Stay tuned for more student-led explorations of North American fiction. Thanks for listening.